Good morning, Shea.
Good morning, Elaine. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's nice to see you.
I know it's good to see you too. It's been too long.
Too long. I'm really excited about your topic today.
One
But
of my
before we
favorites.
get started, I want to welcome everyone to 10 Minutes with 52 Limited. My name is Elaine Shea. I'm the Community Engagement Manager here. And today's guest is Shea Keats, who is a business coach, a strategist, and one of the founders of a company called Breakaway Bookkeeping. She is going to talk about managing millennials and what we need to know now. Shea came and spoke at 52 Limited when we were able to meet last year and led a great session about, how to manage millennials in the workplace. And some of those factors, I'm sure, are still true. But now that we're working remotely, virtually, I think it's even more important to understand how to work with your peers and how to communicate effectively and kind of what those things are that millennials may need in this time away from their teams and their managers. So thank you so much, Shea, for joining us today. And so excited to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. And I think you hit something on the head. When I give this talk, sometimes I'm talking to an executive team of all Gen X or boomers, but the things I want to touch on today, if you are a millennial yourself, a millennial manager or managing millennials, it's really helpful for both dealing with your employees and your colleagues. So we'll dive right in. Oh, sorry, this thing never wants to work for me. Okay, so the first question I always ask is, what is a millennial exactly? Because I think people are still not quite sure of this. Although one really great thing about all of those spring breakers that went down to Florida and got coronavirus, no, nothing great about it, but is that it allowed people to be millennials to be like, hey, that's not us. We're at home with our kids and our dogs and we're almost 40 and we are not out spring breaking right now. So it helped us kind of get a better sense culturally of what a millennial is. So the definition I use is millennials are people who were born between 1980 and 1998. So again, our oldest millennials are about 40 and our youngest are, and suddenly I can't do math, but they're just now entering college and kind of the workforce for the first time. But we're definitely moving out of that young adult phase and more into middle life, which is really interesting. And I always say, don't at me about this fact. I go by the Pew poll, which is a little bit wider than, and some people consider the millennial spectrum. But I think it's good to include those two micro generations on either end. So I'm going to talk about three topics that I think really are affecting millennials right now, and how we can address those and make sure that our management styles and leadership styles are really resonating with our employees and our colleagues. So the first thing that is really important to think about is the kind of leadership that millennials want. They're looking for leaders who are competent, prioritize their relationships with their employees and their colleagues, foster a positive workplace, can self-manage, which is so important now that we are not in the office, and really can communicate clearly and effectively. Again, super important. So first of all, as managers, we want to be really honest with ourselves. If you were already working on your leadership style and being a good leader, don't get discouraged if you can't continue maybe that work, but pick the places where you know you really shine, and let your employees see that. If you had been hoping to work on leadership and you're like, oh, I was going to read this stack of books, maybe right now is not the best time to do it because we're all a little bit stressed out. But just keep in mind that these are the things we want to be developing. I talk a lot about redefining what professionalism means. Because we now spend so much time at work, we tend to have more intimate and intense relationships with our coworkers, with our leaders, with our mentors. So professionalism looks a little bit different. And if you're a manager who's at stay at home right now and you're thinking about your employee, say you had somebody who went on maternity leave and then came back to work and then, oh my gosh, we're immediately at stay at home with no childcare. It's okay to check in on them. It's okay to say, like, how's your kid? Are things going okay? that really goes a long way, and you don't have to worry about overstepping any boundaries with that. Um, on that same note, be transparent about your own struggles. It makes you seem real. It allows it just allows everything to flow a lot more smoothly when you're not pretending that your dog is not freaking out in the other room, that you have been struggling to get your teen to like do his algebra homework all morning. Be open and honest about this so you can create that sense of teamwork and community through vulnerability and through sharing. Encourage all managers and leaders to review your communication style. When you're in the office, we tend to do a lot of this, right? This drive-by communication, like, hey, I'm on my way to a meeting, get me that paper. That's not our, we can't do that anymore. So we really want to make sure that we are being clear. We are communicating in ways that our employees are going to see it and understand it, and that we're not expecting real-time communication. So if you send a Slack message and it takes an hour and a half for someone to get back, that's okay. And if we have that expectation that it's not going to be immediate communication, things are a lot easier. Last but not least, use online tools for community, not just productivity. So we tend to get really into our Asanas and our Slacks and our Zooms, but these can really be great tools for fostering community. And we do this so much at Breakaway because it is a remote company. We were founded as a remote company and we will continue to be remote. So Slack, for example, is our water cooler, and we go out of our way to create channels that foster community, whether it's birthday toasts or, you know, funny articles or whatever it is that we're going to do. And it doesn't sound that necessarily out of the box, but when you are not regularly checking in and making sure that you're doing those things, they can easily fall by the wayside. So just continuing to do that. So the next thing we want to keep in mind with millennials is that they are information obsessed. And they don't understand the concept of need to know only. They want to know why things are happening and on what timeline. And oh my gosh, guys, like we don't know anything. We know nothing right now. Like we don't know what's going on. We don't know when things are reopening. We don't know what's happening. So this is super, super stressful. So in the workplace, we have to work extra hard on always explaining why, and then being transparent, right, in this professional, in this corporate sense. Like, hey, this is what's going on. This is why it's going on. And then most importantly, if you don't know why something is going on, tell your employees and your colleagues that you don't know why. That really helps to build that trust. Again, comes from that place of vulnerability and builds trust. Listen, again, we're not doing real-time communication, so you have some time to process questions before you answer. That's okay. Lean into that. Again, I feel like I'm a little bit beating a dead horse, but you want to communicate openly and regularly with your employees, although not too much. Right before I got on this call, there was something in the cut about this woman who's like, my boss wants to check in like multiple times a day and it's driving me crazy. So again, we want to explore balance. And part of this is also because we are just inundated with information all day, every day from the 24-hour news cycle. So sometimes when we're sharing with our employees or our colleagues, we may, let's say, for example, you have a difficult client and you go off on like, okay, this is why this difficult client, blah, 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 all of these things. Okay, well, did we really need to share that stressful thing with somebody? No. So that really isn't need to know. It doesn't help move the needle forward, but maybe you needed to share, to be vulnerable and to share that with somebody. So think about why you're sharing things. And if you still need or want to share it, reframe. So you can say to your colleague or to your employee, like, hey, I was struggling with this. Can I share this difficult conversation with you? Again, you're coming from a place of vulnerability to create that community, which is the last thing that I want to talk about, which is collaboration and community are so, so, so important to millennials. Engaging in these behaviors allows for really creative thinking and problem solving. So millennials especially are missing this right now. And it's so, so, so hard to not have that time to spend in a group and to bounce ideas and to have that time together. So I really encourage everyone, particularly if you're in a leadership role, to acknowledge this loss and the associated grief that comes along with that. There are projects you've been working on for months that are dead in the water. There are, things that are not happening, and maybe something silly like your team picnic in June. Well, it's not going to happen now. Well, maybe that was something people looked forward to. It may be silly, but acknowledge that grief. Remember that even though we can supplement with the virtual, there was recently, I'm sure everybody read it, the article about Zoom fatigue. This is a real thing. We get it. Having Zoom happy hours, etc., are great, but when when that's your whole life, it's really, really hard. So acknowledge that doesn't replace that water cooler time. Set clear timelines with your team and understand that because they don't have this creative thinking in a group time, that they may need a little longer to get to the same results. And again, along with that, we just always want to understand that stay-at-home life is particularly challenging. Again, millennials are not young singles necessarily anymore. They are established adults with families, kids, pets, partners, parents. So they're really struggling a lot. And resist the urge to conform to a traditional schedule. I think we all know this. I encourage this even when we are back to work. But if your millennial employee needs to look after their baby and then come back to work after that, that's okay. And just acknowledge that. So truly last but not least, my little joke is like, don't ask your millennial employee to fix the printer. And my reframed version is, they don't know why Zoom is not working. I don't know why Zoom is working half the time, but my standard advice is go up to the corner, Zoom preferences, check your audio and see where your input and output is, and that will usually fix it. So that's all for me. I don't know if Elaine, you have any questions, but here's where you can find me. And this was really fun. I hope I didn't buzz through it too fast. I got nervous about 10 minutes.
No, I think Zoom fatigue is very real and very true. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to keep these, almost daily webinars to 10 minutes so that we can get concise information and kind of go about our day. I think what you shared was really great. I resist the label as millennial, although I technically fall into the millennial category. I think millennials kind of get a bad rap, but ultimately, I mean, we're all in this together, regardless of what age group you're in.
Exactly.
We're all working remotely. We're all dealing with obstacles and challenges that we've never faced before. So I agree. Clear communication, transparency is so essential at this time.
Yeah.
I think that I'm really grateful that you were able to spend this time with us, and thank you so much to everyone for joining 10 Minutes with 52. Shea's contact information is listed, so if you have any additional questions or need a great bookkeeper, sounds like she has access to that.
I do.
Be well, take care, hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Elaine, really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.